Welcome everybody to Northwest Small Batch Brewing. My name is Steven, and today's video I want to talk to you about a process in brewing called mashing out. But before we get started, let me pour my beer here. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. It is the Orkney Brewery Skull Splitter Scotch Ale, 8.5%. I was just looking to see where it was made. I can't tell if it's actually from, I doubt it's from Scotland, but maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, so while I get this poured, before we get started with the video, this channel needs your support, and the best way to support it is to become a subscriber. It doesn't cost anything. All you have to do is press that little subscribe button at the bottom of the video, and you'll get notified every time I put out a new video, and it really helps out. So let's get started mashing out. So during the brewing process, you put all the grain, depending on how you brew, you put all the grain into, your pot at whatever temperature you're going to steep it at. And then you do that for like an hour or whatever. And then there's this process called mashing out, where you raise the temperature up to about 170 Fahrenheit or 77 Celsius. Now, this is not a temperature that's just arbitrary. This temperature is set because this is where it denatures the grain, or the enzymes in the grain. There's a funny line in Brewlosophy. Brewlosophy did a whole article about this, but they instead of saying denature, they used the word, well, I'll read it to you. They say that it renders the enzymes impotent and curtails any further activity. Impotent. Okay. It's not the word I'd use, but it is kind of funny. So the whole idea is you denature, which means that if you bring it up to 170 degrees, you've basically cooked everything out of those grains, and you're not going to get any more sugars because that's not going to convert anymore. If you're not sure how that all works, do a little research if you want on how or why we mash grain at a specific temperature range. Basically, there are enzymes that convert the starch that is in the grain into sugar, different kinds of sugar. And depending on the temperature that you mash at will vary how much sugars and stuff. I don't want to get into the details of that. That's not what this video is about. But the point is, if you bring it up to 170 degrees, it basically cooks your grain to the point where it's done. There's nothing left for it to convert. Well, it makes sense. It makes total sense to do this at the commercial level. And I'll explain why in a second. But just a little gripe that I have, and I've said this in other videos about other things. Number one is that not everything in the commercial brewing world translates to home brewing. There are things that you do in the commercial brewing world you don't need to worry about at the home brewing level, for various reasons. This is one of those things. So you don't need to mash out. The whole point of mashing out is for commercial brewers. They have to produce, first of all, think about the amount of beer that a commercial brewing or even a craft brewery is making. They're making, I don't know, 30 gallons more or more. I don't know how much those vats hold, but it's an immense amount. Not only are they making a large amount of beer, meaning that if they screwed something up, it would be a really expensive mistake. On top of that, they are making the same beers over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I mean, how long has Black Butte Porter been around from Deschutes Brewery? I mean, since their beginning. And they are still making it today. They have to make sure that every time they make it, it turns out the same. They need the same yield, they need the same gravity, they need the same alcohol content. They can't have it turn out a little bit above or a little below. They need it consistent every single time because they're selling it on a commercial scale. Hence the reason why it really doesn't matter for a home brewer. If you make a beer and it's off, a little bit on the gravity, meaning that you've got I don't know, a few degrees or whatever, you know, fraction of a percentage higher in alcohol or lower, at the end it's not going to matter. It's homebrew. You're not going to notice the difference, and you're not selling it, so it doesn't have to meet any government requirements. Doesn't matter, right? It does not matter. So it doesn't translate to the homebrewing world. Now, that's the main reason for mashing out, is to lock in the profile. So when they mash out, they know that they've locked it in. They're not going to be able to, it's not going to change. The gravity is not going to change, and they can be consistent every time. Also, it changes the viscosity of your wort. Why is that important? So if you do brew in a bag, which is what, I'm just going to throw a number, it's just totally made up, but I'm going to say like 80% at least of home brewers these days are probably doing brew in the bag. Then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. You're not going to have stuck sparge because all of your grain is contained in a basket or a bag. Oh, that's nice. That's a very malty beer. That's really nice. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So if you're doing old school brewing where you're putting all your grain into a cooler and then you're, you know, sparging, you can get stuck sparges. And so, you know, maybe raising the temperature makes a difference so that you don't get a stuck sparge. But if you're doing any kind of brew in a bag brewing, it really doesn't matter, you know. The whole point is once you turn off, so enzymes, real quick example, when you first start mashing, if you have a lot of grain and you throw in all the grain into the water to start steeping it, it becomes like oatmeal, like thick and very hard to stir, but you give it 5 minutes and all of a sudden it thins out and it becomes very porridgey and thin. And that's because the enzymes have started to wake up from the temperature change, and they've started to convert the starch into sugars, and then it becomes thinner. Well, if you mash out, you're killing all of the enzymes, and it's going to thicken up a little bit, right? The viscosity is going to change because you no longer have the enzymes working. So in that case, like in the old school 3-tier system, there might be some validity to doing a mash out. But in most modern home brewing situations, you're using a brew in a bag sort of method, and most people are actually doing electric brewing these days. Not everybody, but yeah, it's pretty popular. That has nothing to do with anything. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, so the whole point is, oh, there's one more thing, one more misconception that's out there, which is that if you raise the temperature to 170 degrees to mash out, it creates tannins. Astringency gets pulled from the grain. That has been proven wrong. Now again, it may be different at the commercial level, at that larger scale, but on the home brewing scale, raising the temperature and or squeezing the bag does not create tannins. Here's a little secret, I do overnight mash. Whether you realize it or not in my videos, I'm letting the mash sit in the water at its mash temperature 10 hours, 12 hours before I drain it. For me, it's an ease thing. It's not for any other reason, just it's easier for me to just set it, forget it, and come back. But the point being is, it does not create astringency. It does not pull tannins from the grain, at least not at the homebrew scale, okay? So not a problem. Anyway, that's about all I wanted to say, is that you really don't need to mash out. So if you see temperatures calling or recipes that say mash out at 170 degrees, you can choose to do so, or you can just remove that step. It's really not necessarily necessary at our, home brewing level. That's it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'll be back in a week with another full video, as always, and appreciate you being here. Keep on brewing, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.